If you're passionate about something, then that's a good thing because that's how you get intrinsic joy from it and how you stay motivated to achieve something at the end of it. But sometimes I think that people take that a little too far and they confuse passion with obsession. And they're just constantly going out of their way to shove it down people's throats that they're really into something. And they're always talking about it and posting about it on social media. And I think that's a problem. And so in this video, I'm going to talk about first what the real motives are under the surface. In other words, how it's intended to be perceived, followed by how it's actually perceived, why that's a problem, and then what the solution is to all that. So first, let's talk about what some of the hidden and sometimes subconscious motives are under the surface of this proclamation that someone's supposedly really into something, if they're taking it to that extreme. The first of which I'd argue is a means of becoming identifiable to other people. Because if you don't have that, if you don't have an identity, as I've said before, then you're just kind of a mystery. People don't know what you're about, and that kind of opens the possibility for them to judge you in a very negative way, such as somebody that doesn't make sense, doesn't know what they're doing, doesn't have social skills or friends or something like that. So whereas if you can point to something and say, this is my thing, in quotes, I'm the guy that's really into baseball or the girl that's really into music and the arts, then you have that identity. You're a little bit less threatening, you make some more sense, you can fit in with like-minded people and have friends, and it makes you feel a little bit more safe and secure. Also, sometimes the obsessors, as I like to call them, just want to look good, such as by posting selfies at the gym all the time, supposedly to inspire other people to follow suit, when really on the surface, they just want people to look at that and say, man, I wish I was just seething with that much dedication and commitment, because look at how hardworking and ambitious and accomplished that person is. And also sometimes, if nothing else, people are just bored and they have nothing better to do with their time, especially if their parents have taken care of them their entire lives and they've kind of just had everything handed to them. So they try to fill that void by looking for some way of adding purpose and meaning to their lives, such as by joining the latest trendy political cause out there. So they look outside their apartment window and they see a bunch of people really angry about a certain social cause or something, and they think to themselves, that looks like a really fun, great thing to dedicate my life to. So now I'm going to immerse myself into that and be really passionate about it. So now I feel like I have some kind of a purpose in my life, without there really being any more substantial reason behind joining that cause. But now moving on to part two, this is obviously a problem for many reasons. And setting aside the fact that it's inauthentic, right, because you're saying that you're somebody when under the surface, in reality, you're somebody else, it's also very suffocating, because if every conversation has to be dominated by one conversation topic, then there's never really a chance to talk about anything else, which is a need that many people have. No topic is perpetually interesting for us to just talk about it all the time. So, for example, a few years ago, I dated a girl that was a vegan, and I don't have any problem with that. It's just that she was so obsessed with it that literally every conversation had to find some way, shape, or form to point back to that. So we would go out to eat, and she would comment on the food I was eating and say something like, I don't know how you can eat that if it's not vegan. Or I would even ask her about something unrelated, like what her music or movie interests are, and she would say something like, I don't have time to listen to music or watch movies because I'm working on my degree towards becoming a nutritionist so that I can spread the message about veganism and how that's a superior choice to anything else. And contrary to what she might have thought, I was not enjoying any of those conversations. Instead, I just really wish that we could experience a change and talk about something else. It also makes you seem very unidimensional as a person, which in turn makes you very boring and uninteresting, because there's just this one thing that dominates the entirety of everything you talk about and everything that you do. So if, for example, you've used dating apps, which I have in my day, every once in a while you'll come across a profile that says, if you don't support X, Y, or Z political cause, then swipe left. And I can't help but look at that and wonder, if your political beliefs dominate your dating life, then what other aspects of your life do they dominate? And the answer is probably everything. So there's not really going to be anything we can talk about or do that isn't somehow related to that. And I know for me personally, that's not really somebody that I would want to go out with. It also carries very authoritarian and dictatorial undertones if you're so obsessed with something that you expect everybody to agree with you and live life the way that you say they should live their lives. Because nobody wants to have their opinions or their lifestyles dictated to them. And it doesn't really even make sense, because even if you succeed and you make somebody change their minds, it's not because they actually agree with you, it's just because they're afraid of whatever punishment you're threatening to impose upon them if they don't conform. So as a result, most people are just going to avoid you. And even if you set aside the impression that you're setting on others, it's still going to have a negative impact on you if you're pretending to be passionate about something that you don't actually care about just to keep up those appearances. If you're pretending to be passionate about being in the military or acting or playing a sport or something like that, you're not going to make it most likely, because you're not going to have enough motivation and you're not going to have the intrinsic joy that we talked about in the beginning and you're gonna be miserable the entire time because you have to actually put the work in to keep up those appearances. Now, with all that said, what is the solution? I'd say it's comprised of a few different elements. The first of which is to not be afraid to be multifaceted, to be interested in a very large variety of different things instead of just one thing. So if you like to, say, play music, but then you'd rather spend the rest of your time fixing cars, then don't let somebody come up to you and say, well, I would think that if you like to play music, then you would rather spend the rest of your time fixing instruments instead of cars. Then you can just respond to that and say, well, if I make sense, I make sense, and if I don't, I don't. Take it or leave it, that's just who I am. You also have to compartmentalize and leave work at work, as they say, and feel free to talk about different things depending on the context instead of feeling like you constantly need to talk about the same thing in order to make some kind of a statement. Because that's how your conversations become interesting instead of just being monochromatic. And the last two elements are to get intrinsic joy from whatever it is that you're doing rather than pretending to be passionate about it. Ensure that you're going to get something out of it regardless of what everybody else thinks so that you can sustain that and you don't come across as inauthentic, and to make sure that you listen more than you talk. So don't have the goal of every interaction be that the other person needs to walk away knowing who you are and exactly everything that you're about. Instead, see if you can achieve the opposite and try to learn what they're all about. Because then eventually, although it will take more time, that's how they're going to develop a natural curiosity for what you're all about. And then they're going to actually want to hear it, and that expression will be invited rather than being unwelcome. So to summarize, it's okay to be passionate about things. You just can't take it too far where you're obsessed and you're just constantly talking about it, bringing it to people's attention, shoving it down their throats, posting about it on social media all the time. Because if you do, you're not having the effect that you think you are. Instead, you're just annoying people and alienating yourself from them. So instead, just focus on doing what you enjoy, and the rest will just naturally fall into place. So I hope this helps. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next video.